Welcome to the Virgo Potens YouTube channel. If you enjoy this video, then check out the Virgo Potens website at virgopotens.org. Please consider supporting this work by becoming a patron of Virgo Potens on Patreon and by buying my ebooks available on Apple Books. Lastly, I'd like to invite you to subscribe to this Virgo Potens YouTube channel. Thank you, and may the Virgin Most Powerful guide and protect you. The Nature of Angels and Demons Explained by St. Augustine. This Virgo Potens production is the narration of chapters 1 to 3 of Book 12 of The City of God by St. Augustine. It is narrated by Tony Capobianco. The music which accompanies this video comes from the traditional Latin Mass at Prince of Peace Catholic Church. The text of The City of God and the paintings used in this production are in the public domain. Book 12, Chapter 1. That the nature of the angels, both good and bad, is one and the same. It has already, in the preceding book, been shown how the two cities originated among the angels. Before I speak of the creation of man and show how the cities took their rise so far as regards the race of rational mortals, I see that I must first, so far as I can, adduce what may demonstrate that it is not incongruous and unsuitable to speak of a society composed of angels and men together. So that there are not 4 cities or societies, 2 namely, of angels and as many of men, but rather 2 in all, one composed of the good, the other of the wicked, angels or men indifferently. That the contrary propensities in good and bad angels have arisen not from a difference in their nature and origin, since God, the good author and creator of all essences, created them both, but from a difference in their wills and desires. It is impossible to doubt. While some steadfastly continued in that which was the common good of all, namely in God himself, and in his eternity, truth, and love. Others, being enamored rather of their own power, as if they could be their own good, lapsed to this private good of their own, from that higher and beatific good which was common to all, and bartering the lofty dignity of eternity for the inflation of pride, the most assured verity for the slyness of vanity, uniting love for factious partisanship, they became proud, deceived, envious. The cause, therefore, of the blessedness of the good is adherence to God, and so the cause of the other's misery will be found in the contrary, that is, in their not adhering to God. Wherefore, if when the question is asked, why are the former blessed, it is rightly answered, because they adhere to God, and when it is asked, why are the latter miserable, it is rightly answered, because they do not adhere to God. Then there is no other good for the rational or intellectual creature save God only. Thus, though it is not every creature that can be blessed, for beasts, trees, stones, and things of that kind have not this capacity, yet that creature which has the capacity cannot be blessed of itself, since it is created out of nothing, but only by him by whom it has been created. For it is blessed by the possession of that whose loss makes it miserable. He then, who is blessed not in another, but in himself, cannot be miserable, because he cannot lose himself. Accordingly, we say that there is no unchangeable good, but the one, true, blessed God. That the things which he made are indeed good, because from him, yet mutable because made not out of him, but out of nothing, although, therefore, they are not the supreme good, for God is a greater good. Yet those mutable things which can adhere to the immutable good, and so be blessed, are very good. For so completely is he their good, that without him they cannot be but wretched. And the other created things in the universe are not better on this account, that they cannot be miserable. For no one would say that the other members of the body are superior to the eyes because they cannot be blind. But as the sentient nature, even when it feels pain, is superior to the stony, which can feel none, so the rational nature, even when wretched, is more excellent than that which lacks reason or feeling, and can therefore experience no misery. And since this is so, then, in this nature, which has been created so excellent that though it be mutable itself, it cannot yet secure its blessedness, by adhering to the immutable good, the supreme God. And since it is not satisfied unless it be perfectly blessed, and cannot be thus blessed save in God, in this nature, I say, not to adhere to God is manifestly a fault. Now every fault injures the nature, and is consequently contrary to the nature. The creature, therefore, which cleaves to God differs from those who do not by nature, but by fault. And yet, by this very fault, the nature itself is proved to be very noble and admirable. For that nature is certainly praised, the fault of which is justly blamed. For we justly blame the fault because it mars the praiseworthy nature. As then, when we say that blindness is a defect of the eyes, we prove that sight belongs to the nature of the eyes. And when we say that deafness is a defect of the ears, hearing is thereby proved to belong to their nature. So, when we say that it is a fault of the angelic creature that it does not cleave to God, we hereby most plainly declare that it pertained to its nature to cleave to God. And who can worthily conceive or express how great a glory that is, to cleave to God, so as to live to him, to draw wisdom from him, to delight in him, and to enjoy this so great good without death, error, or grief. And thus, since every vice is an injury of the nature, that very vice of the wicked angels, their departure from God, is sufficient proof that God created their nature so good that it is an injury to it not to be with God. Chapter 2. That there is no entity contrary to the divine, because non-entity seems to be that which is wholly opposite to him who supremely and always is. This may be enough to prevent anyone from supposing, when we speak of the apostate angels, that they could have another nature, derived, as it were, from some different origin, and not from God. From the great impiety of this error we shall disentangle ourselves the more readily and easily, the more distinctly we understand that which God spoke by the angel when he sent Moses to the children of Israel. Quote, I am that I am. End quote. For since God is the supreme existence, that is to say, supremely is, and is therefore unchangeable, the things that he made he empowered to be, but not to be supremely like himself. To some he communicated a more ample, to others a more limited existence, and thus arranged the natures of beings in ranks. For as from sapere comes sapientia, so from esse comes essentia, a new word indeed, which the old Latin writers did not use, but which is naturalized in our day, that our language may not want an equivalent for the Greek ousia. For this is expressed word for word by essentia. Consequently, to that nature which supremely is, and which created all else that exists, no nature is contrary save that which does not exist, for non-entity is the contrary of that which is, and thus there is no being contrary to God, the supreme being, and author of all beings whatsoever. Chapter 3. That the enemies of God are so, not by nature, but by will, which, as it injures them, injures a good nature. For if vice does not injure, it is not vice. In Scripture, they are called God's enemies who oppose his rule, not by nature, but by vice, having no power to hurt him, but only themselves. For they are his enemies, not through their power to hurt, but by their will to oppose him. For God is unchangeable and wholly proof against injury. Therefore, the vice which makes those who are called his enemies resist him is an evil not to God, but to themselves. And to them it is an evil, solely because it corrupts the good of their nature. It is not nature, therefore, but vice, which is contrary to God. For that which is evil is contrary to the good. And who will deny that God is the supreme good? Vice, therefore, is contrary to God, as evil to good. Further, the nature it vitiates is a good, and therefore to this good also it is contrary. But while it is contrary to God only as evil to good, it is contrary to the nature it vitiates, both as evil and as hurtful. For to God no evils are hurtful, but only to natures mutable and corruptible, though, by the testimony of the vices themselves, originally good. For, were they not good, vices could not hurt them. For how do they hurt them but by depriving them of integrity, beauty, welfare, virtue, and, in short, whatever natural good vice is wont to diminish or destroy? But if there be no good to take away, then no injury can be done. And, consequently, there can be no vice. For it is impossible that there should be a harmless vice. Whence we gather that though vice cannot injure the unchangeable good, it can injure nothing but good, because it does not exist where it does not injure. This, then, may be thus formulated. Vice cannot be in the highest good, and cannot be but in some good. Things solely good, therefore, can in some circumstances exist. Things solely evil, never. For even those natures which are vitiated by an evil will, so far indeed as they are vitiated, are evil. But in so far as they are natures, they are good. And when a vitiated nature is punished, besides the good it has in being a nature, it has this also, that it is not unpunished. For this is just, and certainly everything just is a good. For no one is punished for natural but for voluntary vices. For even the vice which by force of habit and long continuance has become a second nature, had its origin in the will. For at present we are speaking of the vices of the nature, which has a mental capacity for that enlightenment which discriminates between what is just and what is unjust. End of chapters 1 to 3 of Book 12 of The City of God by St. Augustine. Narrated by Tony Capobianco.